Over these past few weeks, in the midst of so much uncertainty, chaos, and confusion, I found a certain amount of gratitude that I hadn't really expected. I've been looking for reasons to be grateful and making an effort to be thankful for the little things, but there was a bigger example that I hadn't considered until things started to look really bad. It started out with a gratitude about the basics of my life, namely that while I am still relatively young, I was born right at the end of that window of time where children were still born to parents who had grown up during and still remembered the Great Depression. Because I was born later in my parents' life, many of my classmates and friends were the children of parents who had not. The kids of the Great Depression were their grandparents' generation. If you had parents or grandparents who had grown up in the Great Depression, then you will understand what I say when I tell you that they were a colossal embarrassment to you in every conceivable way as you tried to navigate the period of adolescence and your teens. They were awful. They simply had no shame about anything. They believed in patching things, fixing things, repairing things, reusing things, as well as sharing, donating, and worst of all, accepting things from other people. I have 4 sisters, so it only made sense that things would get handed down, but I was the only boy. You think I'd be spared, but I wasn't. Turns out there was a whole network of these crazy people who were handing stuff off as soon as their son outgrew something. It was simply undignified. It didn't matter if our town was one of the first in the country to have the crystal clear magic of cable TV. I was still out there in the front yard on a Saturday morning, part of a human chain between my mother by the television and my father up on the roof, trying to adjust our aerial antenna that we wore as a badge of shame for everyone in the neighborhood to see. My sisters and I felt like the last of the Flintstones, living in a Jetsons world. No matter what it was that the rest of the world enjoyed, cable TV, 10-speed bikes, vacations in Hawaii, those cereals that you saw advertised on Saturday morning TV, or those brand new lunch boxes with the matching thermoses, we were united under the motto engraved on the family crest that declared in all such things, we can't afford it. I exaggerate, of course. We didn't have a family crest. We couldn't afford one. We just had the motto. It didn't need to be engraved anywhere. It was handed down in the oral tradition, frequently. But it still meant that we lived in a single-speed bike world. We just had to pedal faster than our friends if we wanted to keep up. We got by with that brick of shredded wheat that sat there, unglamorously, in the middle of that moat of milk of the cereal bowl, and had no cartoon character ever trying to steal it from a child. We were paper sack kids, and vacations were brief stays in unglamorous places, usually with family, sandwiched between unbearably long car rides and station wagons, with way too many kids squished into whatever space on the bench seat would keep us separated from the last sibling we'd had a physical altercation with. But a not-so-funny thing happened a week or so ago. One of our friends had a large number of people laid off at his place of work. It was devastating news for many of them, and those who still have their jobs are aware that more cuts are still likely to come in the weeks ahead. And then they got word that one of their co-workers went home that day and took his own life. For whatever reason, he looked out upon the world and couldn't see a place or a path for himself that didn't also include his job. Whatever else he had weathered in his life, and I think we can safely say that there were other factors, that job had become a refuge for him. It was the security, the foundation, the fortress from which he could still look out at the world and see a future. Without it, he was lost. As I was reading the first line of Psalm 31, it echoed in my heart this week when I read it. In you, Lord, I have taken refuge. Let me never be put to shame. Deliver me in your righteousness. In it, I heard the cry of the stranger that I only know by a couple of degrees of separation. Let me never be put to shame, he had pled, because for him, the shame was worse than death. And I was grateful, because I couldn't imagine how he got to that place. And I owed it to the vaccination process brought on by hand-me-down clothes, and then a family, along with everything else, couldn't afford shame. We were inoculated by the need to press on, to do without, to make the best of whatever we had, and to use the two resources that we had been blessed with in an unlimited supply, our imagination and our faith. We didn't have the luxury of being phony, but we made up for it with the gift of creativity. And it made us resilient, it made us resourceful, and it made us adaptable. And I was grateful. Because it doesn't matter what this recovery will look like, a U, a V, or a W. The briar patch of "we can't afford it" is where I was born. It isn't a punishment. It's a refuge. Because I will tell you a secret. The world has been full of things we couldn't afford for quite a while. And deep down, we knew it. It was the source of so much of the anxiety that has consumed us over the past few decades. We are being asked to trust people far away to do the right thing, to keep their word, to keep us safe, to solve our problems, guard our secrets, protect our freedom, and secure our future. We knew it wasn't practical to place so much faith in so many who had so regularly let us down. But what choice did we have? And if we really couldn't afford the life we pretended to live for others, they would never know. We took refuge in the carefully manicured posts we sent out into the social media world, in the practiced smiles we wore through the pain, and the hollow show of confidence we cultivated as a fortress to keep the bad things away from our door. But if we were barely able to hold it together then, in the best of times, we certainly can't afford it now. Because it wasn't real, and fake takes effort. Fake takes energy. Fake is fragile. Fake is stressful, and fake is exhausted. Fake is lashing out in its death throes, and it's rearing its ugly head everywhere you look right now. It is angry, intolerant, and is fighting to keep its hold on those around us, even if it kills us in the process, or each other. Listen again to Acts 7, 57 and 58 from this week's readings. At this they covered their ears, and yelling at the top of their voices, they all rushed him, dragged him out of the city, and began to stone him. I know exactly what those faces look like, because I keep seeing them on TV. I keep reading the things that they are screaming at others online. They might not have their hands over their ears, but they can't afford to let in anything that might burst their already leaking bubble. They are way too invested in whatever fiction they thought the world would protect them from what they see happening all around them. Of all the things we can't afford right now, fake is at the top of the list, because fake cannot protect us, it cannot support us, and it cannot save us. Luckily, the things that can are still very affordable. Creativity is free. Flexibility is free. Honesty has always seemed scarce, but is an incredibly powerful ingredient in healing relationships, reducing stress, revealing our true priorities, creating intimacy and trust between you and the people in the best position to help you through this time ahead. Love is an investment, but it starts with no money down. It compounds daily when you invest it wisely. No matter how many times it lets you down or gone bust in the past, there's always another opportunity to invest right around the corner. Don't be afraid to take your time. Choose wisely. Invest for the long haul. Even small gains add up when you are compounding in eternity. Grace is free, and it's more available than you think. Forgiveness is free, even if most of us have to work at it. But before you give it all away, make sure you've kept plenty on hand for yourself. You'll need it. Ironically, the more regularly you apply forgiveness in your own life, you'll be surprised at how much you have left over to give to others. It's a little like love that way. And faith is free. It's also the key to finding refuge in the midst of any storm or calamity. It's portable, and it lasts for a lifetime. It's fully transferable to your children and your grandchildren. If you take some time to read the instructions, it's also good for unlimited refills. Most people find that hope gets thrown in at no additional charge. More importantly, faith gives you that ability to see the next part of the journey when others look around and feel utterly and totally lost. When they can't see any way forward, and they look back on a past that is too fake to sustain them for even one more step. Help them to see it through the briar patch, the tacky rooftop antennas, and the hand-me-downs that have been hemmed way too many times. Show them the patches, the repairs, the dents, the scratches, and the scars that you've sustained, that you've worked through, that you've overcome, that you've survived. Help them to know that there is always room in your family, because no matter how hard it gets, you can always afford to share, to repair, and to repurpose. Hear it again. God's Word, laid down for you, saved up for you, and set aside for your hearing in this very moment. Therefore, rid yourselves of all malice and all deceit, hypocrisy, envy, and slander of every kind, like newborn babies. You are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, that you may declare the praises of Him who called you out of darkness into His wonderful light. Once you were not a people, but now you are the people of God. Amen.